Just a quick note before we begin. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals, just parents who've experienced unimaginable loss. This isn't meant to replace help from a therapist, doctor, or other mental health professional. If you're struggling, please reach out to someone qualified. You are not alone. Welcome back to Don't Forget to Breathe. I'm Bruce Barker, here with my co-host, Kristin Glenn. In part one, we talked about the myth that time heals all wounds and how, for parents who've lost a child, time doesn't take the grief away. It simply asks us to learn how to carry it. But one of the quieter things time can do is distance us from the support that surrounded us in those early days. The calls become fewer, the check-ins become less frequent. And from the outside, it may even begin to look like we're coping or like we're moving on. But grief is patient. And as Kristin shared, it waits for us. Let's pick up our conversation there.
I had kind of a moment of realization when you were talking that what I do think has an expiration date, sadly, is support. And because in the beginning, we are trying all these strategies to decrease the intensity, we might not from the outside world appear that we need the level of support, and we might say no to support. And as we do that, and we don't, reach a hand out to grab support in those early days, months, years, it's not available later.
Yeah.
Or it's few and far between, I think probably, so Zach would be 36, meaning he died about 32 years ago. I bet those first couple years I could have called 30 people for support, but I often didn't want to. I was exhausted by them. They didn't get it. I didn't know what to say to them. And now, that many years later, we can probably move that decibel over to about 3. And I think I'm not bitter about that. I just think it's real. Mm-hmm. But I think especially as people in the early years are going through so much shock and numbing and trying to distract ourselves, that from the outside world, it can look like, well, look how well that Bruce is coping. He's such a strong guy.
He got his funny back.
Yeah.
I'm moving on. Yeah.
You're moving on. So he hasn't said yes to support, so he must not have needed or wanted that. So I think grief doesn't expire, but feels like often the support does.
So we were talking about what time doesn't do, but some of what time does do is what you just mentioned there, is it distances us from that support for whatever reason. It might also distance us from the shock early on, and the shock of, in my instance, getting that phone call and the shock of how that felt. So time may distance me from that, but it's not distancing me from the grief.
Right. That's exactly. It's interesting to watch people in a support group. People within the first year are usually very focused on the death and the shock and the trauma and how did it happen and the details, and need to have space for that. And then I have witnessed so many times after that first year, not that there's a magic bell that goes off in the first year, but let's say year or 2 years, then it really is a shifting towards needing to remember the life, remember the moments. And it's terrifying when you start having their smell, their sound, their little quirks slip away, and watching others have that too, not remembering all the nuances of your child. It's really scary. It's like they're being lost again because I certainly don't remember those. I can look at pictures, I can look at videos, but I couldn't say that I remember the exact tone or smirk or, that's a very, I think a scary thing to many grieving parents is, will I remember the life and the moments and will my senses still be able to feel their presence?
Interesting. One of the things I think, another thing that time does do is it allows us that space for the meaning. Not the meaning of, oh, why did they die? Not the meaning like that, but the meaning of that relationship of all those things is not closure, for sure. There's not closure. But just in my case, I can say that distance and time then got me to a place where grief was walking there the whole time, like you said, subtly knocking on the door, and then it took a battering ram.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? And then taking the time to sit with it, which is, what I'd said earlier of what hasn't changed when I have those moments. It is taking the time to sit with those feelings and those emotions and not be afraid of them. When early on, I didn't want anything to do with it.
It was terrifying. That comfort with grief, isn't that something? Just like we're both saying that, like, okay, come on over, grief. What are we going to talk about today? It's not an avoidance that I feel. It's almost like oh, there you are. There you are. I'm very familiar with you. I guess we're going to have a conversation today, grief. And allowing it, I almost want to say welcoming it, because it is it's so closely tied to my love for Zach that when I have moments and the tears come, it feels like, well, there he is. There we are. I am having a sense of that little 3-year-old boy those curls remind me of him. Or, I too should have been a grandma by now. I should have had little Zachs. And just the comfort with grief is an interesting place to be.
Yeah, it's it did not come to be in that place. It didn't come from time, right? That came from work. And I think there was I don't know if it was in season 1 or whatever, but talking about doing the work, like what is doing the work? And that comes in all kinds of forms. And we could talk about that, at another time on a different episode, but it took a lot of work to get to this point, to be able to sit with it and know it's a companion. Time had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. I think we want validated that time didn't do this work. I did it. I was the one that was intentional. Time just tick-tocked. That's all time had to do, was just tick-tock, like it always has since the beginning of time. And I was the one that had to figure out how to intentionally live and go from surviving to wanting to live. And so I think it's almost kind of disrespectful to say to a grieving person, well, time's going to heal this. You don't need to do anything. And it's just not the truth. It's just not setting them up for the truth.
I don't know if you can remember or if there was even a moment, but when do you think your grief shifted from survival more to what it is now, more layered?
Boy, that's an interesting question. Again, time has such a warp to it. Also, that's what's the funny thing about the time heals all wounds comment is time is so crazy and warped when you're living without your child on this earth. It's 1 second ago and it's another lifetime ago. I think it was really, maybe that in that second year of realizing, oh, this is just who I am now. This is part of my identity. Grief isn't the enemy. What happened, this tragedy is my, what I would want a rewind button on life, but grief is an entity that is part of me, and it's multifaceted, and it's super complex, and it's teaching me something every single day. I think when my grief could become a teacher to me, as you said, became more layered when I started listening to the messages of my own grief instead of wanting to shush it or distract it or numb it, when I was curious about my own grief and was like, okay, what do you got to say? Bring it on, because it appears you're not going away.
Yeah. As you were saying this and answering that question, what popped into my mind, and this is just the complexity of time and just how weird it is, and like you said, kind of being warped. And I think this goes into the point that in one of the subjects that I know that we'll talk about with is grief not being linear. And we'll deep dive into that. And I think the theme for that episode, because this is what came up when you said that, is Interstellar. So if the listeners who have not seen Interstellar, you should watch it. It messes with your concept of time. And like you said, the lessons, I mean, it ties, I mean, you're saying that it just tied so much stuff into the complexity of time and lessons learned and where they're coming from. And now it's just me, right? I'm just saying that's where it landed with me. It's complex.
Yeah.
And time is warped, and it's again, grief isn't going anywhere, no matter whatever that, like, it was always there. So the same as in that movie, there was something that was always there. It had been, and it was going to be, and that almost seems like that was how I was feeling when you were saying that, is that
it's a good analogy.
Grief is complex, and to try to simplify it to say time is going to heal this it's so incredibly short-sighted and too simple. And would we like it to be simple? Sure. But it's just not that. And so I guess what we could ask is, so if time doesn't heal, what actually helps? What have you seen in, like, with all your time and the parents that you've interacted with and support sessions? What are some of the things that actually do help that we know we don't attribute to time?
I think the essence truly is having those brave souls that don't shy away from whatever you are at each moment of this grief journey, because it's messy and it's ugly and it's scary and it's beautiful and it's all those things. And we're not really good at just sitting in that. And there's this old rhyme that I used to do with Zach that was called Going on a Bear Hunt. Did you ever do that with Kristin?
No.
Where you do this clapping and you say, going on a bear hunt. And then the bear comes up to a swamp or something. And you say, oh, the swamp, the bear he can't go over it. He can't go around it. He's got to go through it. And then you make swamp noises. And I think about that so much with grief, is that people wanted me to go around it. They wanted me to go over it. They wanted me to skip it. And the few people in my life that were like, all right, let's go in the swamp. I'm not afraid of the swamp. I'll go in the swamp with you. I'll go climb this mountain with you. So it just feel like that bear hunt nursery rhyme or whatever it was that we used to do. It just made so much sense to me when I was going through grief. It's like, that's what helped, is that the people that were brave to just let me go through it. I needed to go through every inch of this grief, and to say time was going to heal it was not only minimizing my love for my son, but it was disrespectful to grief. Yeah. If grief was a person, I think grief should stand up and be like, oh, what are you thinking? You're going to think time is going to take care of me. I'm bigger than that. And, so really having those people that held my hand in the swamp instead of wanting me to skip it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, it makes perfect sense.
That's what I think about.
Yeah, we have to go. It's going through it. Like that makes perfect sense. You're not going to go around it.
Can't skip it. Can't go over it.
No.
And the bear came up to all these different things, and you just, each time it was like, you can't do this, can't go around it, can't go over it. He's got to go through it again. And that's what great grief felt like. It's like, I did that already. I remember, everyone thought I needed to go to therapy and needed this and needed that. So much advice, mainly from people that had never journeyed through this. I don't think I ever went through to a bereaved support group and got advice, but I sure got it from, other people that hadn't. And it was just so much of, and I remember going through one therapist. I know she was well-meaning, but I said to her, I'm just so angry. I want to scream from the mountaintop. Why? And she said to me, no, you already went through your anger. You're moving on. You're not in that stage anymore. And I just was like, oh, I'm sorry that the uncomfortable part of my grief is not where you want me to be. It's not, as we said, linear. It's not, but she wanted my anger stage to have expired. So even within grief itself, people want you to, as you said, have your funny back. One woman said she showed up to work one day with makeup on, and someone in her workspace was like, "You're better." And she said, "What do you mean I'm better?" "Well, you have your makeup on. Your hair looks nice. We were all waiting for you to get better." And she said that was the last time she wore makeup to work. Because, if my outside is somehow wrongly telling people that I'm fixed or healed or my makeup's on, I guess I need to not give them those false cues that I'm healed, better, closed, whatever term we're going to use.
Yeah, so that they want to see us fixed.
Absolutely.
And better, and that might just be to make them more comfortable. It's awkward.
It is awkward. And it's scary. If you're not better, fixed, healed by this date, are you okay? And I think it can come, doesn't always, but sometimes it comes from ignorance, sometimes it comes from rushing grief, and sometimes it comes from a place of deep love. I looked into my mother's eyes and think, what I witnessed is, please let my daughter come back. I feel like she still misses that Kristin, because I was forever changed by this, and she wanted to fix me too. And it came from the deepest mother's love, right? Of, I don't want you to be changed in this way. I want you back. And her realization over the last, 30 plus years of that Kristin isn't here either. Yeah, so I think the fixers sometimes can people that love us very, very much. I think my husband wanted to fix my grief. I wanted to fix his grief. I didn't want someone I loved to live through this. I didn't want this for him. This wasn't in our plan,
Right.
So it's not, I don't think it's malicious. I think it often is from ignorance or deep, deep longing for what was, to rewind time and have us all be naive that this could happen to us.
Yeah. So this is a great place to pause our conversation. Listening to Kristin share that, I'm reminded that grief doesn't give us a way around it. We can't skip it. We can't outrun it. We have to go through it. And sometimes that means going through the very same place more than once. What makes it even harder is how often the world wants to see us fixed, to believe that because time has passed, we should somehow be finished with our grief. But grief doesn't follow a timeline, and love doesn't expire on someone else's schedule. Join us next time for the final part of this conversation. We'll talk about what it really looks like to be seen in our grief, not as someone to fix, but as someone to sit beside. About the power of simply saying our child's name, sharing their stories, and asking not how they died, but how they lived. We'll explore what helps, like honoring the love we still have, embracing our forever parenthood, and giving ourselves permission to grieve for life. So until next time, I'm Bruce Barker, along with Kristin Glenn. And please, don't forget to breathe. One more thing, if you found meaning or comfort in these conversations, consider becoming a supporter of the Don't Forget to Breathe podcast. Your support helps keep these stories alive and makes it possible for others to find hope in their own grief journey. For as little as $3 a month, your support goes to offset costs associated with production. You can learn more on the information page for this episode. You can also contact us by going to the show notes and click on Send Us a Text. Or my contact email is bruce.barker61@yahoo.com. That's BRUCE.BARKER61@yahoo.com. Until next time.